if you've been manually putting together data to find out the trends in your business, you might be able to hire robots to do some of that work for you. So I'm going to show you some really cool ways that you can get metrics. Metrics can be, I think every business owner knows how important metrics are for knowing what works best in your business and things like that, so you can make data-driven decisions. But metrics can be cumbersome if you're relying on yourself or someone else to pull the data manually, right? So let's talk about some ways that you can make things happen automatically in Airtable if you have all your data in there. Okay, so this is a base of some fake data. This is a business that offers 4 different appointment types right now. Of course, they might grow in the future, but right now they have a 1-hour consultation, 2-hour consultation, 3-hour, and then just like that discovery call type thing, like a 15-minute chat. And so all people who book are booking in Acuity. For this example, they're booking in Acuity, and then this information is being like zapped over or through Make or Pabbly or something like that, being put into Airtable, because it's a lot easier to manage when you have it in Airtable, and you can run a lot better like statistics and metrics on it when you have it in Airtable instead of going into Acuity to see your appointments. And so basically I have created stuff that I would care about for this particular thing. But what I want you to realize is that when a new appointment is put in, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cause a new appointment. Okay, so I just added this line. So Angela Martin just booked a 15-minute chat, and the date of the appointment is going to be on November 4th. And so all of this came over with the zap. It was zapped into here, all of this information. And what I would like to do is I would like to tie this to what month that appointment is happening, what year it's happening, and what day of the week the appointment's on, so that I can get some cool metrics going in my dashboard over here. So see how if I can select and I want to say, hey, I want to see for October. In October, I have 11 appointments. This is the income from those appointments. And this is the average amount of time between the day that the person booked and how far away their appointment was, if I kind of want to get a feel for how far in advance people book with me. And then this is really cool because I can see that for my October appointments, Monday is by far the most popular day that I have appointments. So that's just a cool thing to see. Here it's what type of appointment. So definitely the most common one that I have is these 1-hour ones. If I switch it to like December, so I have no appointments that are tied to December or November. Okay, so let me go back to here. We go September. And so here, Thursday was the most popular day, and my most popular type was actually 2-hour appointments. So, and you can see hopefully the power of this, but in order for this to work, I need to have this drop down here, so I can select the data that the month, like the situation that I want data for. So I would have to be manually coming in here and being like, oh, this appointment is in November. So let me go ahead and tie that to November, and it's in 2022, and the day of the week is blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I don't want to have to come in here and do that manually. So I'm looking for a way that I can automate these things being selected. Now, it could be pretty easy. I actually could do some things in Zapier or Make that would just populate these appropriately as that's being recorded. That would be one option. So let's pretend that I did have that running in the background. But then these people, they get a rescheduling. They can come in and reschedule themselves. So let's say that this appointment with, let me find one that is in September. So like this, oh, Angela Martin right here. So this appointment in September, see how it's appropriately tied to September and that it's a Thursday. But what I'm going to do is I am going to change this to being, she's going to reschedule for the Tuesday, the 27th. And so now it's a Tuesday, but this one will be showing up for my metrics. It'll be showing up as Thursday. And of course the month didn't change, but if the month changed, you can probably see how that would be out of sync. So what I'd really like to do is I'd like to create a way that I can keep this data in sync, and I can hire Airtable robots to do this for me. So if these things are, if the appointment changes, then these things will auto update. So of course, you probably know that we can have, I'm gonna go ahead and turn on some formulas I already have created. So I'm gonna have this month and this year and this day of the week. All right, so I've just turned on these fields. So here, this is giving me the day of, or I'm sorry, giving me the month as a formula. So basically my little mathematician robot, I put this when it's a formula field, so that when I'm looking at it inside of a Zap or something, like I know that that's a formula field and I shouldn't be putting data in there from Zap. And so basically this is the month one where she's calculating it, and she's a really good robot that never makes mistakes. And so I know that whatever she has in this column, this is the truth. Not this one. Okay. And this is the same thing. I'm taking that date time of the appointment, but I'm saying spit out what the year is. And then this one, I'm saying spit out what the day of the week is. So the one that changed for Angela Martin, where it's a Tuesday, what I would like is for if that could come over here and now replace this. So I could just have, like, I could get rid of having these as drop downs, but I really enjoy the coloring. I really like, so this coloring system here, I've done it by quarters, kind of like a warming up of the quarters. So like quarter one stuff is all blue, quarter two stuff is yellow, orange, and green. I really like the color coding that it gives me, and I really like using it over here. So I kind of want the functionality of this being a drop down and not a formula, but I want the consistency of the formula is always right and my drop down isn't right unless someone manually updates it, right? So let's get the robots to do that instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a, like this one is just month, and then this one is like mathematician month, right? So it's kind of like these are the same data point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a third column, and I already have it created here. So I will go ahead and pop it on. So right here, what I've done is I've said, if these equal each other, then put a check mark. If they don't equal each other, like in this case, this Meredith Palmer must have changed her appointment. And so now these are out of sync. So I say, put sync here. And then that is what I'm going to use to trigger an automation to have robots come in and take what's in the formula field and like transpose it over into the single select field that has the pretty colors that I want for my human eyeballs to deal with. Okay, so this is what that formula looks like. So if there is something that exists, that way I don't get any of those errors. So if a month exists in the formula field, then if the month that is the dropdown equals the month that is the formula, put a check mark. Otherwise, put sync. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an automation that goes along with this. So this automation right here, I already have it started. And so I've given it a sensible name. So I can easily tie that back to what this is all about. And I've set the conditions that when a record matches these conditions, that when this column, when it contains sync. So it's worth noting that like it's important because I have to type this in. So if I ever change that formula back in my data, if I ever change this formula and I like made it an uppercase sync, or I did whatever to it, then obviously it would break this automation. So that's where I have done a good job of documenting this with some notes. And sync is what triggers the automation to run. Do not change the wording unless you also update the automation. So that way, if me or someone else is working in my base, they kind of have those little breadcrumbs to know how to best do things so they don't break everything. All right, so going into this automation, basically if any of these records get to where it says sync, then I just wanted to update the record, and I wanted to take the formula, because the robot is right, and paste it over into the single select. And so that's how I've set this up right here. So if I say, let's choose a record for a test. So I have this Meredith Palmer one, and I am going to go to this step, and I'm going to say run as configured, run test. And we should see that the Meredith Palmer one was this one right here. And now it matches and it does not say sync. If we turn this on, I'm going to go ahead and make this one September. Go ahead and make it September. So I brought it into sync. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my automation. And then I'm just going to play around. So I'm going to turn off, I'm going to say hide all. I'm just going to show the ones that I care about for the moment. There we go. These are the ones I'm kind of playing with. So if this Phoebe one, oh, that's in the past, so I'll stick to one that's in the future. So this Pam Beasley one, if she reschedules herself for November 15th, it says sync, and boom, it just corrected itself, right? So this will keep it in check so that you know that when you're using this, you know that you can rely on this data, that it's all being kept in sync if those appointments change. Now, if this was data like it was just like a record of like all your expenses or all of your income or things like that, then it's not as necessary to have this kind of automation set up in the background, because the date of that transaction, the date of that expense, those aren't things that change. But when you're dealing with things like appointments, that the date of the appointment can change, then you want to make sure that your data is reliable. So it makes sense to have these kinds of automations running in the background. So I can do the same thing for like day of the week, because if I want to be able to have like a good way of segmenting out, if I want to get statistics on like, hey, what day of the week do most people seem to book? And I want to be able to see that, I can run similar things. I'll just turn on these other fields that I have here. So I have the same concept for year and for day of the week. So I can keep these things in sync. I have not set up the automation. This is just all fake test data, and I have not set it up. But basically I would set up this automation to also, actually what I would do is I would set up a view, and in that view, I would have it be that any of those things have sync in them, like any of those three columns. I tend to go that way. I mean, yes, it means I end up with more views, but I don't know. It just helps my brain. It like all makes more sense in my brain when I see those views over there. And so basically I would set up a view, and I would make that view say, and I would put a little caution emoji, or I would put a gear, because it has to do with automation. I tend to use the gear when it's an automation. So that's what I would use. Automation, and say sync, month, day, or year. And then I would set the conditions to be filter, where, and then I would just do ors. And I would say where this one is sync, or, and I would find that other one, the month, is sync. Oh, I just did the same one twice, didn't I? Ugh. All right. Sync, or, and then the last one. Oh, I don't have those names right. I need to go fix that. Okay, I think that I got those. So yeah, I will update my field names, because I copied and pasted and then edited, but didn't change day of week. There we go. And this one, I will call it year, sync year. Okay, so see how these ones are in this view, because it's not synced. The robot says it's this day, but our data shows that it's this day. So now I would come and I would change this, and I would say when record enters view, yes, I want to, and I would pick that view, and it is from the appointments table, and it's this one. And then I would make it so that it's doing all the things, that it's just going to go ahead and override all of them. So I would pick the month one, and then I would also pick, I want the single select year, and then I want to dynamically fill in what the robot says the year of that appointment is, because she is right. So I'll put this one, and then lastly, I'll get my day of the week one, and I'll dynamically configure that to be, boom. Oops, I did the wrong one. Boom, not that. Day of week. This one. No, the formula. The formula one is the one that I want. So it's important that what I'm mapping in each of these, that I'm picking the one that's a single select, which I am. Nope. Yes, I am. And then it's important that the one that I'm mapping in is the one that has my little mathematician robot in there. Perfect. I'm going to update this automation. And now I'm going to go ahead and go back to my data. I will manually take care of these guys just to get it so, because right now in this view, all of these people are existing, but they were already in there before I turned this on. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to just bring that over. I took care of it. So this view is empty, and I intend for it to always be empty, right? But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this view that we are working with, and I will change Jim's appointment. Instead of being that, I'm going to bump it up to September 27th. So this sync and this sync are there, and boom, it just took care of all of that. So this continues to be an empty view because I don't want people to be sitting there. If they're sitting in there, it's telling the robots that I've hired in this automation, like, hey, I have a task for you. And then when they do it, they're like, okay. And then there's no, they take it out of that view for me, right? Okay, awesome. So that is a way that we can keep our data, like that will give us, and I'm using simple stuff here. I'm using the date of the appointment, things like that. And the purpose is so that I can just see that month or that quarter. Like you could do this with quarters, you could do it with anything, right? But then it lets us see things like the income and the average number of days, out that people booked, and the types of appointments that were most popular, the days of the week that were most popular, whatever. If this was a real base, I feel like I would have so many more like data points in here that I could find ways to add and have an awesome, even more robust dashboard than what I have here. Okay, so this dashboard is pretty cool, especially if you're a business that hasn't been doing any metric tracking. Like, wow, this is so much better than nothing, right? But it does have some limitations. And so one of the limitations for me is like that I'm getting this stuff month to month and I can see it, but it's really hard to be like, oh, so I had, my August numbers were this. Well, how does that compare to September? Oh, well, let me go to September and see. Right? So it's kind of like I have to almost like take this data and then like put it somewhere. And that's a manual process for me to come in and do that and then take the individual month's data and put them somewhere else. And I can set up another table in my base where I could automate some of that. Now, I feel like the interfaces are a lot quicker to set up. The interface builder, you just drag in the different things you want to see, you configure them. I feel like it's relatively quick to set these dashboards up. I feel like it's a little more cumbersome to set up what I'm about to show you, but I just really like how it lets me compare one month to another month. And then like I even do super cool stuff like feedback averages into the original appointment space and things like that, like just super cool stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to set up that part. So the first thing we're going to do is start with a new empty table that's called months. And I like to cram a bunch of stuff into the names of my records by using formula fields for them. But what happens is that when you have a formula for the name of each row, then you can't create new entries. So it's actually important not to have this as a formula field. It needs to be blank. And so I'm just going to call this the month. I guess like it's the month year. Maybe I'll name it this way. So I am going to be strategic in how I decide to name these because I want it to show up with the year first, because when I pull like reports, I want to be able to, so I want like the year and then I want the number of the month instead of the name of the month, because then I can say sort in ascending or descending order and it actually makes sense. So the numbers are the key. So I will go set that up. Okay, so I went ahead and I set it up in, not here yet, but I'm not going to use this. I'm going to delete this. Okay, so I set it up over here. And basically, I used the formula of putting the date and time of the appointment into the format of year, space, number of the month, and I want the 2-digit. I don't want just one. I want 01 for January. That's important for being able to put it in numerical order. And then I like, my human eyeballs kind of like seeing the word for the month instead of just the number. So then I put a dash, and then I'm putting the short code for that month. Okay, so I'm going to say save on that, and now I'm going to create I'm going to create a link to the month right here. I don't want it to be able to be tied to more than one, so I'm going to check that off, and I don't need that. So basically, I'm going to select all of those, and I'm going to paste it over here. So now when we come here, those were created. These were the 3 that kind of come standard. And so see how every single appointment that happens in that month automatically just got tied to that? So this is the basis of being able to do roll-ups inside of this table. I don't really need to see all those appointments, but now I'm just going to start creating a bunch of roll-up fields. And so, you know, like, and I tend to start them with my graph. So number of appointments, like just total number of appointments. I could do a count field, but I like the idea of doing the roll-up field for count because it ends up letting you have more power in the long run. And so basically I'm using the count A since this is a non-numeric thing. It's just like saying like, hey, how many non-empty things are there? And so that is basically doing the same thing that a count field would do. There are 10 appointments associated with this. Then I might want to, like, I tend to just start duplicating, and I'll say, and I'll use my system because I'm using purple for canceled status. So I'll say canceled appointments. And then I will turn on this and I'll say only count the ones where the status is canceled. And so I should have 0 because none of them have it. If I go over here and I mark one, so Pam Beasley, let's pick one that was in the past in August. So I need to turn on the status in order to test this. There's the status. And so it doesn't matter. Monica, in August, she was canceled. So now it's showing me that I had 1 canceled appointment. So if I want to keep track of that kind of thing, I would probably go ahead and do this for all the different ones. So I would change this one to like the, not scheduled. Yellow is my color for scheduled. And so if I want to see, like in the month that I'm currently in, how many of them are like future appointments versus how many have already been completed. And so then I would just squeeze it down to only being the scheduled ones. And pretty much I've left all of these as scheduled at this point. I haven't marked any as completed. And then I would duplicate this and I would do the same thing, but now for my blue. So it'd be completed appointments. And I'll squeeze it down to only being those. And again, it's 0. So just for the sake of demonstration here, let's go ahead. Let's also mark one as a no-show. I mean, why not? And the month that we're in is September. So half of these in September will make them as completed and some not. So now we see that in September, there's 10 total appointments. 0 were canceled, 6 are scheduled, 4 are completed, right? We are only doing like a count. Let's also experiment with, it doesn't matter. I'll just go ahead and I'll duplicate this. And I will say, I'll put the money sign and I will say like total income. And then I will now not roll up this. I will roll up the amount paid. Remember, I have 2 fields. One's amount paid and one's cost of the appointment. If I want to know my income, I care about the amount that the person paid. And I don't care about, I'm not going to filter out. And then here, I'm going to use the sum. Okay. The other things that I might care about doing, not just like the appointment statuses, but like I might care about knowing, especially if I have a lot of different products, like say I'm tracking like a physical product that I sell or like a service product that I sell, and I want to know like how many of these did I sell in that month, then it would be the same sort of thing. So let me just go ahead and I'll duplicate this one. And I use squares for my different appointment types. So green is the one for the 1 hours, I'm pretty sure. So 1 hour appointments. So now I want you to count appointments, but I only want you to count the ones that the appointment type is the 1 hour consultations and it's a count. So now I know how many of that appointment type. I'll duplicate that and I will now do it for the 2 hours, and I'll do the purple and I'll put 2 hour appointments. So now I'm kind of getting these statistics on what was my, like, it's like, oh, that's interesting. For some reason in September, my 2 hour appointments were super popular, like more popular than normal. Okay, and then obviously I could do that for the other 2 appointment types that I have, and I would follow that same system. So just some ideas for like other types of things that you could start getting trends and statistics on over here in your monthly statistics table. In this example, there just wasn't a lot that we were tracking about these appointments. We were keeping it really simple. But like in my normal business, I teach concealed carry training classes. And so I have people who sign up for these classes. And part of the intake form is I'm getting their address, their zip code, things like that, their gender. I'm getting those sorts of like information points, their birthday. And so then some of the things that I have as roll-ups over here is I'm looking at the average age of my customers. I'm looking at the zip codes where most of them come from. Because, if I'm going to put money into those little like flyers and advertisements that go out, like knowing where I pull from the most, I feel like my advertising dollars will be better spent there. So things like the zip codes that come up the most frequently, the average age, I'm trying to think. I built for a client one time. After her appointments, she sent out a feedback form and they gave it a score of 1 through 10. And then she had that number next to their appointment. And so we were able to roll up the average of all those ratings. So then she could see over time, like potentially like, man, my ratings used to be more like closer to 10 and they're starting to drop, or vice versa, right? So if you had any sort of rating system in place where you're asking for feedback like that, if you're asking where people heard about you from, you can start to pull in information like that and find out those trends. So sometimes I even take these further because I know the total number of appointments and I know the total number of like canceled or whatever. So now I'll create a column where I do math on that and I basically write a formula and I'm going to say, what is the percentage of canceled appointments, right? So I can see if that percentage is going up or down or whatever. So I won't write the formula, but hopefully you can see that like you have 1 canceled out of 6 total. So what's the percentage of that? What percentage were canceled? Okay. Trying to think. I have like, since I teach concealed carry classes, I have multiple instructors out on the range and I want to know how many people each of those instructors worked with. And so like I have columns for like, if you saw my real base and all the statistics that I'm pulling, it's actually kind of overwhelming. But if you have a way of keeping it using different views and things like that and keeping things organized, data is awesome if you have a cataloging system to keep track of it. Just shoving it in there and making it look like a thrift store, like where there's no order or reason to anything, then that data can start to be overwhelming and be useless if you're not able to actually look at it and gather what you want. So yeah. And like if you were using a coupon code and you wanted to know how many people signed up using that coupon code, things like that. I mean, there's just, the sky is the limit on what you can do with a table like this, but it all starts with each of your appointments or each of your transactions or whatever has to be tied to the appropriate month, and it has to stay tied to that month in order for this data to be accurate. So that's what we need to do next. Also, I'll mention that we're only looking at an appointments table and bringing it into here. I actually also have a way that I'm pulling in expenses. So I pay for the facility that I rent out for the classes. I pay instructors to come work on the range. So I also have those tables that are pulling into this same month table. And now I'm able to say, okay, what was my total income? Because I'm pulling that number from, like here, it's one coming from the appointments table, but I'll be able to pull a similar one, but it's pulling from the expenses table, for either the location expenses table or the instructor expenses table. And now I can run a formula that says, okay, take the total income and subtract out this column and this column because those were expenses. And now tell me my adjusted income. I also bring in, since we sell physical product, I can bring in a table where I'm tracking those sales and what month they're tied to and look at our physical product. So I actually have 2 sources of income, 2 tables of expenses, and I want to be able to get the master income for that month. So this is actually a pretty basic example, but I think basic keeps it easy to understand, of course. I just want to inspire you that the sky's the limit, and whatever is important for tracking in your business, I'm sure there is a way to do it. And And one thing that's going to be important if we are going to utilize this is that obviously we also want each of these appointments to automatically get tied to the right month. We want to set that up on autopilot like we did these other things. So in order to do that, I have, this is the formula. And then, and I will go ahead because this is a formula. I'm going to put mathematician lady. I'm going to put that here. Okay. And then this is the one where it gets linked. And so I'm going to need to set up one of those formulas. And so I'm going to, hurry up. Okay, so I finished this formula. So this is what it looks like, very similar to the other ones. I'm saying if that month-link formula exists, then ask the question, does it equal what it's linked to? And if it does, let me know with a check mark. Otherwise, put the word sync here. So I'm going to need to, I can't be done there. I still need to go into this automation. So I am going to keep it as it entering the view. I'm going to need to edit that view. And I'm going to add one more thing here that it's going to do the, I'm going to look for the, this. So I want to update this field and I want to update it dynamically with what is in the, I know I have the word formula in there. This one, monthly formula. Okay. So I think that is it. So I'm updating the linked record with whatever's in that formula. Perfect. Update this. And now I need to still go back to this view. This is the view that is triggering that automation. And I need to add the condition in here or, and then it would be the sync. And you know what? Like I should keep consistent here is sync. Okay, so let's test that out by pretending. I need to just go to this regular grid view. I am showing the columns that matter. All right, perfect. So basically, if I were to change, let me close down this. If I were to change one of these appointments, let me do this one up here. If Angela Martin reschedules and she reschedules for November 4th, then she's tied to the wrong thing, all of that, like all of those things just auto-corrected, right? So this view, she would have went in there for a second. That's the inbox for the robots. Hey, we got a task for you. And then when they take care of it, it's out of that inbox because it's taken care of. So this automation that we build is going to keep it so that all the things that we need for getting metrics are always kept in sync in the background without us having to do anything. So again, why I kind of look at this, let me just hit publish so we get out of the edit mode. What I see the difference in looking at something like this versus looking at this is I like how, I like seeing this better is better for human eyeballs. Absolutely. But this lets you get a little more like big picture of tracking trends over time without having to drill into those specific things. Not as friendly human eyeball wise, but I feel like maybe sometimes even more powerful. If you're looking for help building out systems, solutions, automations, powerful stuff for your business, I would love to help you. You can find my scheduling link in the description below.